Chapter 6, Plan, Subchapter 6.1, Introduction to Risk Management. This chapter deals almost entirely with the contents of Clause 6 of the standard. Clause 6 describes planning, which you may recall is the very first step of the PDCA cycle. The sixth clause starts by stating, where should our planning come from? When planning the OH&S Management System, the organization must consider the factors referred to in Point 4.1, Context, the requirements referred to in Clause 4.2, Interested Parties, and Point 4.3, Scope of its management system for OH&S, and determine the risks and opportunities. What does it mean? It means that our risk analysis should have the context analysis as an input. Let's go back a little bit to what we saw in Chapter 4. In our context analysis, we wrote down the interested parties, the internal issues, and external issues. Then we found out what are relevant and what are not. For the not relevant, we said, game over. For the relevant ones, we said that further evaluation is needed. Well, this is the moment in which we do this evaluation, and this evaluation is called Risk Opportunity Assessment. So let's switch to a more complete version of the scheme. You don't have to immediately understand this part of the scheme. By now, let's just stick with the idea that your risk opportunity assessment is part of a more complex scheme. At the end of this chapter, this scheme will all be clear. Why is planning so relevant? Why does the standard put so much stress on the concept of planning? Let's start from a basic definition. Planning is the process of thinking about the activities required to achieve a desired goal. The key word here is thinking. We could firstly see the classic way of managing safety, reaction. Some OH&S specialists manage safety just by looking at the things that happened, and then, of course, do something to prevent it from happening again. In this slide, you can see a negative event represented in the red box, a guy that goes from being fine to being injured. The OH&S specialist, who is the guy with the necktie, just asks himself, what happened? But it's clearly not enough. When the OH&S specialist wonders what happened, it's already too late. It's not acceptable. The modern way of managing OH&S is completely different. It's prevention. A strategy focused on prevention means avoiding something by stopping it before it even starts. In this slide, the OH&S specialist is trying to think about ways a worker could injure himself. In this way, he could prevent the event from happening. How is it possible? We just remember that the world of ISO is a world of rationalization. Therefore, there is not much room for guessing. There are no such things as fortune tellers in the world of ISO. The only real way to prevent something is a thorough study of anything that could lead to it. This kind of study is risk management. What is the scope of risk management? In our field, which is OH&S, it is used to prevent hazards, prevent or reduce undesired effects, achieve continual improvement. And you may ask yourself, where could I use it? This technique could be used basically everywhere. It is used in quality systems to prevent non-compliant products. It is used in environmental systems to prevent environmental disasters. It is also used in other areas, such as insurance companies. In Clause 6.1.1, the standard says that the organization must keep documented information related to risks and opportunities, processes and actions necessary to determine and deal with risks and opportunities. So the risk opportunity assessment is so essential that it is one of those relatively few documents that you really have to make. That's why we put here the icon that we always use when there is a document that is truly mandatory. And how should you make it? Like for all the other documents, the 45001 standard has no strict requirements about how your company should do it. We will try to make together a simple and effective document that fits the standard requirements. Subchapter 6.2, Theoretical Bases of Risk Management. So, before going into details about how you could prepare your risk and opportunities analysis, we should spend some time to see what the standard wants us to use as input for this document. Let's see the inputs. Everything that, globally, you have to take into account while preparing your risk analysis. Clause 6.2 says that hazard identification has to take into consideration many different things that are listed from A to H. First, point A. The organization must take into account how work is organized, social factors, including workload, work hours, harassment. Think about it. A lot of jobs are considered risky because they are considered hard work that require physical labor. For example, some kind of factories, such as steel factories, are almost always noisy and hot. Also, some jobs are considered risky because they may expose workers to harassment. Think of nurses. They have to deal with patients who may not always be collaborative. Many jobs come with specific stress and risks. Point B. The organization must consider both routine and non-routine activities. Maybe your organization is not that risky when it's doing its routinary activities, but could be risky in non-routinary activities. This is true for many factories, where the routine work is quite simple and not risky at all, while non-routine activities, such as cleaning the machinery, may expose workers to some hazards. In this example, cleaning the machinery could lead to risks because it may involve hazardous chemicals, or it may need the worker to go to areas different than the usual ones. He may have to go there to change a fuse, to open a valve, etc. Also, the human factor plays a significant role while doing something non-routinary. Another valuable input for your risk and opportunity analysis is to learn a lesson from your company's past. For almost every incident that occurred in the past, you should ask yourself if it's still possible for it to happen again, in a way or another. It's very simple. If once your employee slipped on a wet floor on your company, your risk analysis should consider the possibility of it happening again. As historians say, learning about your past is the best way to figure out your future. In Chapter 10, which is about the topic of improvement, we will see in good detail how you could keep track of your past incidents according to the 45001 standard. Also, potential emergency situations and the precautions your company takes to be prepared if they occur has to be taken into account. This topic is so important that it deserves a lesson entirely dedicated to it. Another key input for your risk and opportunity analysis is thinking about who has access to the workplace and their activities. So you must think not only about workers, but also about contractors, visitors, and other persons, even clients. All these people that are physically in your workplace may be injured, or they may injure other people. You should think about the companies that are physically your neighbors, and how they could be affected by the activities of the organization. In the event of a major incident, like a fire, a safety problem in your company may cause serious problems to other companies. Or it could be vice versa. They could harm yours. Some risk analysis also considers workers who are not under the direct control of the organization. Even the contractor of your contractor, also called subcontractors, may be relevant to your company's OH&S. Point F wants us to focus on technical factors, such as the design of work areas and work organization. Point G wants us to focus on another possible source of hazards, changes. That's why there is one clause, which is Clause 8.1.3, that is entirely focused on change management. We will explore this concept better in the lesson about it. Another key input may be a new scientific discovery or new technologies. They may change, even quite quickly, how your company may think about its risks. Just think of all those productions that were considered not so dangerous just a few decades ago, like asbestos manufacturing. Subchapter 6.3 How to make a risk opportunity assessment. Now let's proceed and see in detail how the risk opportunity assessment has to be made. This is a quite practical subchapter, so after a very brief introduction, you will see the pencil and wrench symbol on top. Our starting point in this lesson is uncertainty. The future is not written yet. There is no such thing as a crystal sphere that makes us know exactly what the future will be. This uncertainty could have two types of effects on your company. It could have a negative effect, in this case, we call it risk, or it could have a positive effect. In this case, we call it opportunity. So, what should we do? Should we avoid all risks and opportunities? Absolutely not. A healthy organization makes evaluations of its risks and its opportunities. This helps them in planning the right strategies to prevent them and face them. That's why in our scheme, you may see that from risk has an arrow that leads to risk evaluation, and opportunity has an arrow that leads to opportunity evaluation. In the following chapters, we will learn to make risk evaluations and opportunity evaluations according to what the 45001 standard says. One final note before going forward. So far, in this course, we almost entirely talked about hazards and risks. In other words, we just thought of negative aspects of uncertainty. The reason why is quite simple. It's easier for us to do so. Thinking about something that could go wrong is more intuitive than thinking about something that could go well. Nevertheless, the 45001 standard asks us to take some extra steps and think about both risks and opportunities. How to make a risk opportunity assessment? The standard asks for a standardized way of evaluating risks and opportunities. This means that we have to come out with a defined set of rules to do it, and just follow them. During the 45001 audit, the auditor will check if your rules make sense, and he will see if you applied them correctly. Most companies have a simple set of rules like this. 1. Write risks and opportunities. For each relevant interested party, write at least one risk or one opportunity. 2. Evaluation. Then, for each risk opportunity, make a probability impact evaluation. This is the best way to weigh them. 3. Plan improvement actions. And finally, use the evaluation that you made at point 2 to decide if your organization has to do something to avoid the risk or catch the opportunity. Let's see these steps in detail, focusing just on risks for now. The first rule could be summarized in write risks, opportunities. What does it mean? For each relevant interested party and for each relevant internal or external issue, write at least one risk or one opportunity. This rule is a direct reference to our context analysis document, so we have to go back to what we said while preparing it in Chapter 4. So, a quick recap of our context analysis could be useful. In our context analysis, we made a list of all the interested parties and all the internal and external issues that we could think of. For all of them, we made some evaluations. We asked ourselves, how much do we think they influence our OH&S? Or how much our company does affect their OH&S? If there is a mutual influence, we state that it is relevant. If not, we state that it is not relevant. Now the new part. The standard asks us to come up with a risk and/or with an opportunity for each one that we classified as relevant. In this slide, ABC is considered relevant, therefore we come out with item number 1, which is a risk. DEF is considered relevant, therefore we come out with item number 2, which is a risk. LMN is considered relevant, therefore we come out with item number 3, which is an opportunity. You may ask, when is an opportunity needed? When is a risk needed? It depends on the interested party and on the internal-external issues. Some of them may lead more naturally to a risk. Some of them may lead more readily to an opportunity. What matters is that overall, your risk opportunity assessment is made, well, considering both risks and opportunities. Now let's try to talk about something more concrete. No more A, B, C, and D, E, F. Let's make some examples of risks and opportunities. We already saw one example of an interested party, workers, and an example of an internal issue, procedures, instructions, guidelines. And finally, let's add an external issue, market competition. As for the risks related to them, we have written them in the description column. For workers, one risk could be unsafe practice by contractors could create unsafe conditions for the company's workers. For procedures, instructions, guidelines, one risk could be not all workers can properly access to the needed procedures since the company only uses the digital copy. And for market competition, we can think of something positive, an opportunity. If competitors use a new safety technique, the company could learn from them and implement it as well. So far, we just had to come out with hypothetical risks and opportunities. But thinking about risks and opportunities is not enough. Now we have to decide what risks and what opportunities need our attention, and what don't. This could be done through the second rule, evaluation. The rule that we wrote was, for each risk opportunity, make a probability impact evaluation. There is not just one way to evaluate risks, but here we will see the most common, the probability and impact matrix. Probability and impact matrix is a tool for the project team to aid in prioritizing risks and opportunities. What do we mean by prioritizing? We mean that we have to find some way to find those who need more attention, more time, more resources. As its name says, this method works by giving to each risk opportunity a probability value and an impact. For risks, it works this way. Probability. The probability value answers to the question, how likely is it to happen? For now, let's make a scale that goes from 1 to 3. Impact. The impact value answer to the question, if it happens, how bad is it for my company? Same here, let's make a scale that goes from 1 to 3. Final calculation. Level of risk opportunity. After you gave to each risk opportunity these values, you can give to each an overall value of level of risk opportunity, which can be obtained through a simple calculation. The level of risk is equal to probability of the risk times the impact of the risk. Before jumping to some examples, it's better to elaborate more on these concepts. How do we assign these probability and impact values? You have different ways to do it. The most effective is to choose a set of questions that may help you to access the right values. For the probability value, you have to ask yourself, has this ever happened before? If yes, high value. If not, low value. Can my company manage this event? Is it entirely on my company without other companies or other people having some influence on it? If yes, low value. If not, high value. Is this event already taken care of by my management system? In other words, is my company already taking care of it? If yes, low value. If not, high value. Usually, auditors like very much when companies have some rational, fixed way to think about probabilities. The more your methodology is fixed, the better. For the impact matrix, the same principle applies. Try to pick some fixed questions and always ask yourself more or less the same questions. They could be the following. Could this event lead to a severe injury? Could this event lead to death? Could this event have a negative influence to other aspects of my company, such as the environment? Or could it lead to quality issues? And now, we can use the third rule of the risk opportunity assessment. Plan improvement actions. The probability impact evaluation rank determines a specific set of actions by the company. We have to make a correlation between the level of risk, opportunity, and the improvement actions that your company has to do. A good probability and impact matrix states exactly what has to be done for every level of risk opportunity. It could be the following. Level of risk of 1 or 2. It's all okay, no need to improve. Level of risk of 4. Some attention is needed. The organization checks the situation through audits and through checking indicators. Level of risk of 6. The organization puts in place improvement actions in the medium term. Level of risk of 9. The organization puts in place immediate improvement actions. Subchapter 6.4. A risk assessment example. Now that we really set the rules in Chapter 6.3, in the following slides, we could put them in practice with one example of risk assessment. And by the way, I can anticipate you that in the Chapter 6.5, we will see an example of opportunity assessment. In the first example, we will pick one risk and we will evaluate it together. We could go into details with this risk. Unsafe practice by contractors could create unsafe conditions for the company's workers. What does it mean? The risk of a worker injuring himself because of an error made by an external contractor, such as a worker of the company that does maintenance to heavy machinery. Now we can start playing with probability and impact. Let's figure out the probability. Has this ever happened before? Let's say yes. Is it all on my company? Well, no. My company has to do its part, but also my contractor's company has to do its part. Does my company's system already manage it? Let's say no. In this example, my company has no process that states exactly how to manage these situations. With this scenario, I think that the probability level is very likely. Let's give it a value of 2. This means moderate probability. As for the impact, let's ask ourselves the question we made before. Could this event lead to a serious injury? I think so. Could this event lead to death? Well, in the worst case scenario, it could. Could this event have a negative influence to other aspects of my company, such as environment? Or could it lead to quality issues? We could say that the environmental problems are less likely, while some impact on the production is likely. With these answers, the impact level is 3. This means high impact. Let's go to the matrix then. If probability is 2 and impact is 3, 2 times 3 is equal to 6. The risk level is quite high. What did we say for that level of risk opportunity? Let's just check our matrix. Level of risk of 6, the organization puts in place improvement actions in the medium term. So, we are back once again to our risk opportunity assessment. The only part that is left to write for this example of risk that we played with is the action. For now, we will leave it blank because the action part is a matter that is so important that it really deserves a lesson on its own. Subchapter 6.5, an opportunity assessment example. Now that we explored the concept of weighting risk, in this second example, we can explore the concept of weighting opportunities. For opportunities too, we can think in terms of probability and impact, with a very different state of mind though. This time, we will think in positive terms. This is because, as you can see in this slide, opportunities are the positive effect of uncertainty. Exactly like we did with risks, the starting point is always the context analysis. Our opportunity has to be linked to an interested party and/or internal-external issue. In this example, we will start from this external issue, market competition. So, let's think of an opportunity linked to market competition. In our example of a cheese factory, our competitors are, of course, other cheese factories. Cheese manufacturing, like any other industry, uses relatively complex machinery. We could assume that as years pass by, new models are made with modern technology and new safety measures. For our company, the opportunity could be keeping in touch with competitors and be updated on technologies they use. By doing that, your company could learn from its competitors, keeping itself competitive as well. Let's put this whole hypothesis in a simple phrase. Our opportunity could be, if competitors use a new safety technique, the company could learn from them and implement it as well. Once again, we have to use the matrix. Probability. How to weigh probability? Basically in the same way we weighted risk, by asking these questions. Has this ever happened before? Can my company manage this event on its own? Is this event already taken care of by my management system? We could just add one new question like, what kind of resources does this project even need? Answering to them will help us understand how much feasible this opportunity is. There is not much point in an opportunity which is not likely at all, or not manageable by my organization. A probability level of 3 means that this is a very feasible opportunity, with a probability level of 1 means that by now this event is quite theoric. Impact. As for impact, the questions involved are the following. Could this event lead to a concrete improvement in the organization's OH&S? Could this event prevent death? Could this event have a positive influence on other areas of my company, such as the environment or quality? And now, just like before, let's use this matrix in order to give this opportunity a probability level and an impact level. Probability. Has this ever happened before? Maybe not. This leads towards a high score. Can my company manage this event on its own? Yes, it can. This too leads to a high value. Is this event already taken care of by my management system? In our example, it's not. What kind of resources does this project even need? Usually these projects need some time because the OH&S specialist can't just pick up the phone and ask. Some time and effort is usually needed to gain this kind of information. For example, the OH&S specialist could attend specific meetings or webinars, or make a subscription to some kind of association of the main cheese producers. Or maybe some kind of specific consultancy could be needed, or the OH&S specialist should need specific training. So there are many answers that make this opportunity quite possible. Overall, we could give it a value of probability of 3. Impact. Could this event lead to a concrete improvement in the organization's OH&S? Yes. Could this event prevent death? Well, this is a stretch, but yes, it could. Could this event have a positive influence to other areas of my company, such as the environment or quality? This is a big yes. Working following quality principles means having a standardized way of doing it. Actually, most of the times, companies write procedures mainly for quality reasons. So, also, impact could have a value of 3. Now it's time to check our probability impact matrix. If probability is 3 and impact is 3, the overall value of opportunity is 9. In our rules, 9 leads to immediate improvement actions. In other words, This is an opportunity that your company really needs to take. It would be a shame not to. And here, you can see the final result. Our opportunity has been duly weighted. Finally, our global scheme of the risk-based thinking methodology should be clear. You can take some time to appreciate how at first, it could be seen a little bit too high, not enough concrete. And then, little by little, it becomes very pragmatic and leads to specific improvement actions. Once again, we should check what the standard asks us, just to see if we are overall compliant. The company's methodologies and criteria for assessing OH&S risks must be defined concerning their scope, nature, and timing to ensure that they are proactive rather than reactive. Yes, our methodology is more oriented to prevention rather than correction. We all know that prevention is better than cure. Risks and opportunities are entirely a preventative tool. It's all based on hypotheses. Also, our company should do a systematic evaluation. Are we compliant on that? I really think so, since we built a systematic methodology. Subchapter 6.6 Improvement Actions. Improvement actions are the last bit of a journey that starts with the context analysis. We could make this very brief recap. In the context analysis, the organization maps its factors and internal-external clauses. Then, for all the relevant ones, the organization thinks about risks and opportunities in the risk-opportunity analysis. Lastly, for all the risk and opportunities that have a high level of risk opportunity, the company has to plan improvement actions. That's it. Improvement actions are the main topic of this chapter. We will see both why we have to plan them and whether or not the standard wants us to do them in a specific way. In Clause 6.1.4, Planning Action, there is a clear indication of how and why an organization compliant to ISO 45001 should take improvement actions. What really matters for us by now is this part. The organization must take into account the hierarchy of prevention and protection measures and outputs from the OH&S Management System when planning the action to be taken. This means that every action that we could think of follows the so-called hierarchy of prevention and protection measures. The best way to tackle a problem is always through prevention first. The standard also says, in planning such actions, the organization must consider best practices, technological options, and its financial, operational, and business requirements. It means that a 45001 certified organization has to use the best technology available. Using obsolete technology would be a clue that safety is not on top of your company's priorities. The term BAT, which stands for Best Available Technology, is often used. Improvement actions must: A. Be consistent with the SSL policy. This means that they have to be compliant with the generic principles stated in the OH&S policy. If, for example, your EHS policy states that your company believes in the participation of all workers in OH&S, your improvement actions should do so. It is not likely to have only actions that involve just the top management. And also, B. Improvement actions must be measurable, if practicable, or be able to provide a performance assessment. This means that improvement actions should be somehow measurable. Most of improvement actions are linked to indicators, with a specific result set as a final goal to reach. And finally, of course our goals have to be monitored, and the results should also be adequately communicated. A 45001 certified company should have an improvement program made of improvement actions. Every improvement action should be planned by writing down for each one what needs to be done, what resources, for example, financial, human, equipment, and infrastructure, will be required, who will be responsible, when will it be completed, how the results will be evaluated, including indicators for monitoring. As you may already have guessed, the improvement program and the improvement actions in it have to be written in a document. There are many reasons for it, mainly because it's the only way to keep track of what was planned to do, what has been achieved, what has not been achieved. The program should be reviewed at planned intervals and adjusted as necessary to ensure that the objectives are achieved. Usually, the OH&S specialist meets with the company management once or twice a year and just checks all these actions, one by one. This review can be done during the management review meeting. Now that we have all the criteria, we could write together a couple of improvement actions. We are entering a build module then. Example 1. For example, we could think of an improvement action to do something for the risk unsafe practice by contractors could create unsafe conditions for the company's workers. You might remember that when we made the risk assessment, we left only the action part left to be written. Well, now we will. This is the basic scheme. We will use it to be sure our actions will be planned, just like the standard requires. The scheme forces us to write the action that we want to take, the resources, who is responsible, the final date, indicators, final goal. Okay then, let's fill this matrix together. The risk that we want to face is unsafe practice by contractors could create unsafe conditions for the company's workers. What could we do about it? In other words, how should we plan the objective of reducing manual handling incidents called by contractor? This objective could be reached by changing the way workers do their activities. So firstly, the company should ask specialized consultants to do some kind of study on how manual handling is done by contractors and how they could influence the safety of the company's workers. Most of the times, the risk of incidents is reduced by little to drastic changes in the workplace layout. So we could describe this action this way: technical evaluation by specialized consultants. Now let's fill the resources column. What resources, for example financial, human equipment, and infrastructure, will be required? The company should basically say at least how much money it's going to put in this project. In our example, some money will be required to pay the consultancy, and some money could be necessary to change the layout. We could say that this project could need like $5,000. We could also write how many hours of work this company would like to use for this project. In our example, it's 10 hours. In the final date column, we will write when it will be completed. In this input, the more we are clear, the better. Let's say that a project should be completed by the end of the fiscal year, October 2020. In the monitoring column, we will put how the results will be evaluated, including indicators for monitoring. The best indicator would probably be the percentage of handling incident. In final goal, we could say that the project is successful only if these kinds of incidents are reduced by 10%. In responsible, we will set who will take care of this whole project, who is to be held responsible if the final goal is not reached. In our example, since this is an improvement action which is centered on OH&S technical matters, we put OH&S specialist. Mind you, it doesn't mean that he is the only one working for it. He is just the general manager for this specific project. Finally, in the effectiveness verification, we will put the final outcome. We always have to make a final check, and we really need to write what actions were effective and what actions were not. Example 2. This example has to come from a risk too. All improvement actions come from risks. This will come from the following risk. Not all workers can properly access to the needed procedures since the company only uses digital copies. So, what could we do to prevent this risk? The OH&S specialist could plan a series of lessons to workers in which all the contents of the procedures are thoroughly explained. Let's write extra OH&S training of the company's procedures. What resources, example, financial, human, equipment, and infrastructure, will be required? It depends on how big the company is. A company with 50 workers could have all of them fully trained by just one person in 20 hours globally. To be specific, some time is of course needed to prepare the lesson. It could be put here too. As for the money, this kind of object doesn't require much money to be done. The company will have to pay workers while they attend the courses, so we could consider that for the main cost of the company. So we'll write 20 hours, 1 teacher. When will it be completed? This objective doesn't seem urgent, so let's say that we aim to complete it in 1 year. Monitoring. how the results will be evaluated, including indicators for monitoring. We set an indicator that gives us an idea of the participation of workers, the percentage of workers that attended the course. As for the final goal, the goal could be at least 95% workers. We could set more than one indicator. For example, we could have added an indicator that gives us an idea of how effective the course was, the percentage of final tests that were successful. The goal could be 90% of the test should be successful. Who will be responsible? These kinds of projects usually have more than one worker responsible. The best way to plan it could be having the OH&S specialist responsible for the good outcome of the workers' training and having the production manager responsible for making workers actually attend the courses. Having more than one responsible for different parts of the project usually works since it makes all the organization involved and makes everyone do their part to make it work. As for the effectiveness verification, it's the same just like example 1. In this step, we can't say if it's effective or not. There will be meeting throughout the year in which the improvement action is evaluated through these indicators. And of course, during the management review meeting, the final verdict on its effectiveness will be given. Now you have finally seen all the journey from start to finish. You may ask, how complex should the improvement program of my company be? Does it need to have 3 improvement objectives or 10? Well, it depends on what you wrote in the context analysis and then in the risk opportunity assessment. If your risk opportunity assessment states that your company is exposed to very few risks and has very few opportunities to catch, I expect your improvement program to be very slim. But on the contrary, if your risk opportunity assessment is full of risks and opportunities, with the overall level of 6 or 9, it means that your company really has to improve. So I expect to find an improvement program that is quite rich. Well done! With this chapter, we almost completed the risk management plateau. Now you have all the needed tools to make a context analysis and to evaluate risk and opportunities. These are core concepts of the standard, so if you think you got them right, you are very close to your final goals. Now comes the slightly more challenging part of the course, the milestone project. After completing the milestone project assignment, you will be 100% sure about having what is needed to prepare a context analysis document and a risk opportunity assessment. So, what happens after the assignment? After the assignment, we will walk through an uphill made of Chapter 7, Support, and Chapter 8, Operations. Since both chapters deal with the do part of the PDCA cycle, we could call it the do uphill. These concepts may seem challenging, but since we are planning to go through them with our step-by-step technique, there is no doubt that we will get on top. Once again, if you need some extra explanation, please send an email at occam@occam-consult.com.